Welcome to Town Talk. I'm Sarah Beal Fletcher, and I'm joined today with Nina Coleman. We're going to do an update on beach raking. Nina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going as far as beach raking, which has been a really big topic of discussion this summer. So we want to make sure everyone's aware of what's been going on. So let's start with where we were.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is a really hot topic, so I'm happy to come here and let everybody know where we're at. Beach raking has always happened on many of our public beaches. There was a change in requirements for permitting for beaches that fall in what's called priority habitat. So beaches that have endangered nesting shorebirds associated with them. So there was a change in the requirement there for permitting. In Barnstable, there's Sandy Neck, which is not what we're talking about. That is fully permitted. But the other beaches, our Southside beaches that are priority habitat, are Craigville, Colville's, Douse's, Calmus, and now Forts Beach.
Okay.
And so because of this change at the state level, we were not able to rake those beaches in 2023. And so there was some feedback from the public, particularly around Craigville and Colville's. There really was a request to rake those beaches. Those are a little unusual because we don't actually have plovers there. They're near there. So we selected those beaches for what's known as an interim raking plan with the state. We did receive that, and we were able to rake those beaches every other week starting in July. So Craigville and Colville's were raked on July 4th and then Tuesday.
The 18th.
The 18th, thank you.
Yep.
And they will continue to be raked every other week for the summer.
You know, I think that's the crux of what people were concerned with, that they felt like those beaches were being not raked as well as they thought. But let's talk about, I know in our previous episode of Town Talk, we talked about beach raking, we talked about the rack line, and I want to kind of go over that again so people understand that there's two rack lines. There's the rack line that's kind of right at the water's edge, and then there's a higher up rack line that kind of happens with storms or heavy winds or heavy rain, things like that. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Now the rack line down at the water is the rack line that doesn't get touched. That's the habitat for the shorebirds and, you know, all sorts of things on the beach. There's all sorts of fun things in there for them to get. And then there's the second rack line, and that's kind of the one that people were concerned with.
That is correct. Absolutely. Yeah, that active rack line at the water's line has never been raked. So even back in the day when we were raking all our beaches, in my tenure, we were doing them twice a week. And we never were able to touch that rack line.
Right.
And so people need to understand, like on the Southside beaches, maybe we have a couple of days with the wind out of the south, and that's a very heavy rack line because everything's sort of pushing up, right? I saw Craigville the other day, it was like that. And then suddenly the wind changes and, you know, it becomes less.
Yep.
So that's an active, important part of our ecosystem. And it's going to change daily, and that's not what's on the table here.
Right.
What's on the table for beach raking is, like you said, the high storm tide line. So those big deposits that aren't going to get taken back out with the next tide because they're up so high. Litter control, just, you know, making the sand really attractive, like fluffing it for a better word.
Right.
That's what beach raking is.
Right.
And so that's what we're focusing on for our permitting. We do want to make sure that if we do have a really big storm, that we are able to take out that heavy rack. So that's also being looked at, but again, not that lower rack.
Right. And another thing that can contribute to that upper rack line is us humans and our trash and what we leave behind. So it's really important to remind people to clean up after themselves. Don't leave your trash on the beach. If there's no trash receptacles that you can find, take it with you when you leave, because that adds to it, because everything gets blown around on the beach and it all kind of ends up on the rack line. That's just naturally, it's going to get stuck there, it's going to get caught there. So where we are right now is that you have the, what did you call it, for Colville's and Craigville?
It's an interim beach raking agreement with Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. I know it's a lot.
It is a lot.
So, I mean, I live it, so it makes sense to me.
Right.
But, we have this interim agreement. It's a letter. I submitted an actual proposal for 2023. They gave us back a letter which said you may do all of this for these specific beaches under all of the, you know, we have to monitor. There's a lot of mitigation, if you will.
Right.
One of the requirements in that letter was to submit a full beach management plan, beach raking management plan for Craigsville and Covil's. And that plan is in draft form. It has been submitted for like initial review by Natural Heritage. And that's if that's approved, it would be a 5-year permit to do just Craigsville and Covil's.
Right.
And there's a number of things that we wrote into that permit. So we wrote in the every other week litter control raking in that higher part of the beach. So that wouldn't start until July 1st. Plovers are really active nesting in the early part of the summer. So there could be scrapes or there could be nests. So we're not allowed to rake during that time period to protect the species. So we would rake before the species got here in April, get up all that real messy debris that comes in through the winter, take a time period off, and then start raking in July 1st. Having said that, if we did have a storm, I wrote into this permit request, if we did have a storm in May or June, and there was a really big seaweed deposit, we could, with a lot of mitigation and a lot of staff, go in and clean that up. So those months would also keep the beach clean.
Great. And that plan is for 2024.
That plan is for 2020. We're all set for 2023.
2023 is good. We're good to
yes.
go. We have the interim.
Yep.
And so this plan that you have to National Heritage right now is for 2024. It's a 5-year plan, and it will allow for, the other thing that will also allow for is the special events to still continue to be held at these beaches, and any kind of beach amenities that might need to be added onto the beaches just for these kinds of things.
Right. It's a formal agreement. I mean, we have a lot of, Craigsville's marquee.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of really great events there. We just wanted to make sure we had a place holding for that. If they were in certain times of the year, again, that like May, June time of year, which is really imperative.
Yep.
We may have to have staff on site, but it's sort of setting up a formal agreement with Natural Heritage. This is what we plan on doing. This is how we're going to handle it. So we wrote all that into this 5-year permit that won't start till next year.
Right.
We're good for this year. Yes.
And then over the winter, you're going to work on plans for the other beaches.
That's correct. So we have Dallas and Calmus. Those are trickier beaches. We all know we have birds there. Everybody sees the cages, the fencing. We may not be able to get as much raking. I'm going to get as much as I can.
They're unique. Like unlike Craigsville, which is the habitat is near Craigsville. It's not on Craigsville.
Exactly.
With Dallas and Calmus, the habitat is on the beach. It's there. You can see it when you go. So it's definitely it's a little trickier. So it's going to take a little bit more for those agreements to be made.
Yep, both Dallas and Calmus is going to be a winter project, and then Forts Beach is another one that has a new plover family associated with it. Our plovers are doing well. They're not doing amazing, but they're doing well.
Enough that they spread out, and now they're at Forts.
Yeah, so that one, I'm not sure I'm going to handle that one, but that one also has the boat launch over the sand, so that's kind of a tricky one too.
Yeah.
So that's my winter projects.
Yeah, this is great. I think everything sounds like we're in a good spot now, and then you'll get this, it's currently under review with them, and then you'll get it back from them and kind of adjust from there and be ready for 2024. And like you said, it's for 5 years.
That's correct.
So hopefully that will get it set up so we're good to go for years to come, and then you can use that to move forward. Every 5 years, will it be good for 5 years, or will it have to be reviewed every year?
There's quite a bit of reporting requirements, so we'll have to be doing that, sort of staying in touch with Natural Heritage so that they feel like we're following our side of the bargain. But it wouldn't have to be renewed for 5 years. And we would be seeking 5-year plans for the other beaches as well. I haven't decided if I'm going to do them all together in one plan or separately, kind of working through that. But going through this first one it helps because now we have a boilerplate.
Yes, so you have somewhere to start from.
Yes.
Great. Is there anything else about this that you wanted to talk about?
Well, there's a lot of material out there about the importance of RAC. So part of this is for the town to hear that folks want the beaches to look a certain way, but also people need to understand that they're not going to look exactly how they want them anymore.
Right.
So we certainly get that material out there, but RAC is a really important part of the ecology.
Yeah, the beaches on Cape Cod have seaweed. That's just how it is. That's how it's going to be. It's how it's always been. It's not going anywhere. We're not getting rid of it. it's a part of it, and we need to understand that. In our previous episode, talking about this, you talked about, learning about what's in the rack line, and I think that's really cool. I mean, I love it. It's part of the fun of walking on the beach is like looking to see what's in there, and you can find all sorts of stuff.
Yep,
Shells,
absolutely.
sea glass, little bugs.
Little bugs,
Yeah.
which is all good stuff. It's all part of the ecology, and not only do plovers feed in there, a lot of other animals use the rack as well. So we'll find a balance.
Yep.
It's going to take a lot of work, but I'm excited to keep educating folks about this topic and working on these permits.
Great. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you.